There is a thought you had this morning and you believed it was yours. You were lying down, the phone was already in your hand, and you don't remember searching for it. A feed scrolled past. Something made you angry. Something made you feel small. Something made you feel briefly, beautifully understood. Then it ended. You got up and you carried the residue of those small feelings into your day, even without ever realizing and naming what they actually were. In a thousand windows this morning, the same thing happened in a thousand different languages, in a thousand different small private rooms. Each person believed that that thought was actually theirs. Folks, this is not a film about your phone, this is a film about who is sitting where you used to sit. Let's get this straight up. There has always been an outside, a voice you did not generate, an image you did not invite, a piece of culture that arrived in your life before you asked for it and fundamentally changed something inside you and left without leaving a forwarding address. That is not new. Religion did it, television did it, the advertising industry built an entire economy on the sheer principle that the human attention could be cultivated, harvested, and resold. What is new is the speed. What is new is the precision. What is new is the thing on the other side of the screen that now learns faster than you fundamentally learn yourself. Each day, the average adult is inside several hundred algorithmically curated decisions. Which post comes first? Which face appears next to which word? Which song follows which song? Which video autoplays when the last one actually ends? You did not select any of these, you did not consent to any of these, you were not even aware that most of these decisions were actually yours. And yet, by the time you sit down to dinner, your mood, your beliefs, your sense of what is important in the world, and the small private inventory of who you think you are have all been quietly adjusted by something that does not know you, that has, however, observed you very closely and precisely. The first thing to understand is that none of this was done to you. You were invited. You said yes, and the saying yes is what makes it almost impossible for us to accept. In a laboratory several decades ago, a researcher placed a pigeon in a box. Inside the box was a lever. When the lever delivered food, every time the pigeon pressed it as it actually needed. When the lever delivered food sometimes at irregular, unpredictable intervals, the pigeon pressed the lever obsessively for hours, long past the point where it was actually hungry. The unpredictability was the addiction. The possibility of a reward was more compelling than the reward itself. Every major social platform on earth runs on a version of this fundamental principle. The refresh that might deliver a like, the notification that might be the message you would have been waiting for, the scroll that might surface the one piece of content that finally explains how you feel. They are not metaphors, they are the same mechanism that built Las Vegas, adopted, miniaturized, and placed it in the pockets of every human being alive on the planet who could fundamentally afford one. The pigeon does not know it is in a box. The pigeon only knows that the lever sometimes delivers food and that the lever is the only thing in the world worthwhile doing. The strange thing, the part of the story that is the hardest to hold, is that no single person is actually doing it. The architects of the systems are not villains. Most of them are not even clinical. Many begin as idealists. There is no room, there is no decisions, there is no person you can point to. There is only an optimization function, a mathematical instruction repeated billions of times per second that asks one question and one question only. What will keep the human here for 30 seconds longer? And then it does it. There is a specific kind of evening that did not exist before 2008. You meant to read, you meant to call someone, you meant to think about a thing you had been avoiding thinking about, and then somewhere between the second tap and the third tap, you stopped choosing. The hours that followed did not feel like hours, they felt like a single elongated minute. They felt like nothing at all. And when you finally put the phone down, what you noticed was not what you had seen. What you noticed was the strange flatness on your own mind, as if something had been done to you in your absence. Something had. The architecture of modern feed runs on three fundamental principles. Let me explain. The first is frictionlessness. The interface must remove every obstacle between desire and action. You should never have to wait. You should never have to choose. The next thing should always already be ready, queued, waiting, and breathing. The second is intermittence. Without frictionlessness, the reward must be uneven. Most of what you see should be remarkable. Some of it should be exquisite. The brain learns the ratio even without it ever being told about it. The third is actually escalation. To keep you here longer than yesterday, the system must show you something slightly more intense than yesterday, slightly funnier, slightly more engraving, slightly more naked, slightly more confirming of what you were already fearing of. The escalation is small enough day to day, and every single day it keeps compounding as if it is invisible to the human eye. But over a year, over 5 years, the version of the internet you are looking at is no longer the internet anyone else is looking at. It is a private theater built around your own nervous system, showing the show that most likely is going to keep you in the seat. The temptation at this point is the story, and the only fundamental reason for it to completely fully exist is it to make a villain, to name the platform, to name the founder, to find the room where the bad decisions were made and the bad people who made them, and to point. But the truth is actually colder. There is no room, there is no decision, there is the function, there is the data set, there is the loop. And inside the loop, ladies and gentlemen, every day a small, irreversible thing actually happens. The version of reality that wins is the version that wounds you the most efficiently. A child born in the last decade will, by the time she finishes school, have spent more hours inside algorithmically curated environments than she will actually spend in real conversation with her own parents. She will form her sense of what is beautiful from her feed. She will form her sense of what is funny from her feed. She will form her sense of how to be a woman in the world from her feed. The feed will not love her. The feed will measure her and adjust to her and keep her as long as it can inside the small, bright rectangle that learned before she did exactly what she actually wanted. Her parents will say she's on her phone too much. She will say that her parents don't really understand her. But both of them are actually right. Neither of them will be able to do anything about it. This is the part of the film where the writer is supposed to say something hopeful. He will not. Loneliness is the medical sense and is also now classified by every major public health bodies, or at least most of the public health bodies, as an epidemic. This is a strange word to use about a feeling, but the data is not ambiguous. The number of close friends the average adult reports have actually fallen in the developed world by roughly half over the past 4 decades. The number of adults who say that they have no one to discuss important matters with has approximately tripled. We are, by every measurable standard, more connected than we have fundamentally ever been, and we are also, by every measurable standard, lonelier than we have ever been. These two facts are not in tension, these are actually the fundamentally same fact and the same point. There is a particular kind of contemporary loneliness that has no historical precedent. It is the loneliness of isolation. The lonely person is not alone. The lonely person has, in some statistical sense, hundreds of friends. The lonely person has access at any hour, at any given point of time, to more human content and human connects than any monarch in human history could have actually summoned. It is the loneliness of being in constant company without ever being in the room. It is the loneliness of being witnessed by everyone and seen by no one and understood by absolutely no one. It is the loneliness of being a self who has been outsourced. capacity for empathy, for putting one's self inside the inner life of another person, is actually a very, very measurable trait. It has been measured in a self-report studies of young adults that for severe decades, it has actually gone on to decline. The decline is also very, very significant. The steepest part of it actually occurred within the last 20 years. It is not that humans have started to become more crueler, right? That's not the point that I'm trying to prove. It is that the muscle required to imagine another mind is not being fundamentally used. The interfaces inside which we increasingly live are optimized for a different muscle, the muscle of reaction, the muscle of judgment, the muscle of maybe a snap take, the slow, costly attention incentive work of putting yourself inside the mind of somebody you disagree with or you have a different point of view. There is no system in the world that is going to pay you to do that work. So psychologically what starts to happen is you don't do that work and that work stops and the muscle slowly starts to degrade and you never fundamentally use it. A political opinion increasingly is not something that you arrive at fundamentally and very naturally. Let me explain. It is something that you're actually delivered to. You start on some platform somewhere by clicking on a video that actually interests you, right? That has an interesting topic. What the system actually does is the system notices the click, it serves you a second video, slightly more committed to the same position but on the similar topic. You watch it and then it serves you a third. Over a period of weeks, you receive that content, and on the day that you actually started, you would have found extreme, right? You do not notice that shift very naturally, and that shift is the medium in which you now live. What you notice is that the other side has become unintangible, hostile, and unrecognizable. It is unintangible to you because it is being shown a different version of reality, adjusted like yours by the same kind of system, optimizing like yours for the same kind of attention. The two of you are no longer disagreeing. You're no longer in the same room. You're no longer looking at the same world. This is the deepest of the visible costs. Not the loneliness, not the lost attention, not even the radicalization. The deepest physical cost that you actually encounter is that the shared world has begun quietly and now is slowly coming apart. For 10,000 years of human history, the people in your village argued about how to interpret the same set of facts. Now, increasingly, we do not have the same set of facts, and that's the irony. We do not even have the same set of headlines, right? Different headlines are being shown to different people. We do not even have the same sense of what actually happened yesterday because perspective is shifting so quickly. Perspective shaping mechanism and perspective shaping system have been evolving so quickly that it's so difficult for a human being to actually compete with these systems. The capacity for collective reality, the strange, fragile thing that allows democracies to function and friendships to survive and families to remain in the same room over a holiday, that capacity is slowly starting to erode by systems whose only instruction was to keep us here for a little longer, by engineers who thought they were reducing friction, by no one in particular. This is what the war looks like. Not soldiers, not violence, not even argument. A family at a table in a warm and well lit room, eating in silence, each of them already somewhere else mentally. There is a question that until recently no one would have thought or dared to ask. The question is this: how would you know? How would you know if a desire you felt this morning was a desire you arrived at naturally, or a desire that was actually delivered to you by a system or an algorithm? How would you know if political conviction you hold passionately is the conclusion of your private reasoning or the residue of thousand small inputs you can't remember ever receiving? How would you know if the person you believe yourself to be is a self you have actually constructed by your own means? Or is it actually a self that has been arranged around you by systems that knew you before you did? What kind of self would keep you the most engaged? You would not know. There is no test, there is no internal sensation that distinguishes a thought you came from versus a thought that you are actually directed to. both of them go on to fundamentally feel the same, right? They are very, very identical. The horror is not that you're being lied to, the horror is not even that you're being manipulated. The horror is that the categories that would let you tell the difference, my thought versus their thought, my desire versus their desire, my opinions with versus their opinions, those categories have begun to dissolve, and their logical and their fundamental reasoning is slowly starting to erode because nobody is able to tell those things apart. Not because anyone destroyed them, because no one defended them. What remains then of human beings? This is not a rhetorical question, and it is also not in this film a question that will be answered. There may have been a part of you that existed before the feed, right? There may still be. It is, for an honest observer, unclear how much of that part remains and how much has been quietly replaced by a version of itself that the system found easier to manage. You may have noticed this in yourself in passing moments, a flatness that has no source, an opinion you cannot remember acquiring, a desire that, examined slowly, does not seem to belong to anyone you would recognize as yourself or who you truly were. These are not symptoms, they are the texture of a self that is no longer entirely its own, fundamentally a borrowed personality. I know I'm going to get a lot of backlash, but this is what I feel and this is what I wanted to kind of communicate. This film does not end with advice, right? I don't want to be leaving this video trying to give you a big advice as to how you can be yourself. Quite honestly, I haven't figured out that answer myself yet. And there is no list of applications to actually delete. This is not a complete systems type video where you go into the system and you're trying to screw applications, you're going to put them in different buckets and then you fundamentally eliminate them to slowly start getting towards the path that were you naturally from day one. There is also no 5-step program, there is no detox, no permanent fix, no rescue available at the end of any individual level, individual viewer who's actually sitting where you're actually sitting, because the architecture is not at its root a personal problem. It is something else, and it is something larger for all of us to figure out. And the films that end at the level of what you personally can do about it tend to be films that are no longer telling you the truth. What this film can offer instead is the smaller, harder things, the acknowledgement that the question you were asked 20 minutes ago that has still not been fundamentally answered. How would you know? You still do not know. The film will not tell you. The film cannot tell you. There is, as far as any honest observer can determine, no method available to a person sitting inside the system by which the person can reliably distinguish the parts of themselves that are still their own from the parts that have been arranged or been borrowed from a system that they have not given permission to. This is the position from which you are actually living in today's day and age. It is the position from which most of the people you know are also living, whether or not they have noticed or acknowledged. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the truth. There is a thought you had this morning and you believed it was yours. It may have been. You will, in the ordinary course of day, never find out.